And Scott, your church will never go where you are not intentionally leading it. And you said
Yeah.
that, and you put it in writing even for this week.
If you want to see these kinds of changes, know that it will never happen just by you wanting it to happen. It's going to take some real leadership, as you said, AJ,
Yeah.
and some intentionality, some strategy in order for that to happen.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. We're in episode 80 this week, and there's Scott over there, and I'm AJ. And today we're talking about 5 characteristics of winning ministry goals. And this kind of like got two major themes here. One of them is strategy, and the other one is leadership. And so today we've got 5 things that we think are pretty important, regardless of what your goal might be. If you attack it with these characteristics in mind, should set you up on the road to success. It's not the end all, but these are, you can put some weight on these things.
Right. How can you create a goal? This is what we want to focus on, these 5 things, is what makes a good goal. Now you're thinking, oh, 5, that's the same number as SMART. Well, like a SMART goal, if you might be familiar with SMART goals. There are some similarities to the SMART goal approach, but they're not exactly the same. These are tailored more towards thinking about the ministry context. So I encourage you to tune in, listen through all 5 of these things as you're shaping goals over the course of the next year to come.
Let's jump in. Number 1, could be business or church, but the church has a very specific component of this, and we're talking being mission-centric. If you are about making and maturing disciples of Jesus, you already are on the right path. And from this point now, with that established, let's set some real specific and measurable goals, and we'll talk about those in the next points here. But having your church mission-centric has got to be number 1.
Yeah. It's very easy to get off course. I was just talking with a church actually earlier this week that is having some significant financial challenges in this first quarter of the year, and they're trying to figure it out, and they're trying to maybe set some new goals. The challenge for them is to be sure that you don't get away from the mission. You can't chase the dollars. You have to chase the mission. The dollars will follow the mission, but if you create a goal that sort of divorces yourself from the mission, it's not going to be good. Ultimately, generosity is a reflection of healthy discipleship. So if you focus on the right things, the dollars will come. If this church gets off track, which I don't think they will, but they've got to guard themselves and go, well, we can't just be making strategic decisions based on what's going to get people to give more money. We've got to make decisions that are in line with the mission and trust the Lord that the giving will rebound or whatever. So be sure that as pressures come in and things get difficult and you want to get a quick result on something, that you don't create a goal that shifts you away from that mission of making and maturing disciples.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Our second one here is that your goal be measurable. And maybe this seems like a no-brainer to you, but let's dig into this a little bit too. And Scott, I just love this first sentence that you wrote in here. Imagine if the official length of a marathon was long. And that just, I just think that's hilarious. But if we think about our goals in the church in those terms, then who is even going to get on board with that? Why would anybody even care? Which again comes back to our mission. So all of these things really, they're interconnected and they relate to one another. So if the mission of our church is to make and mature more disciples, our goal can't be make and mature more disciples. It's got to be more specific than that, and it's got to be measurable. I mean, sure, you could say, okay, we have one more this year. We measured and we gained one. But that's not what we're talking about. We've got to have something out there that we really are setting our sights on and that we can measure our progress towards an end.
Yeah. I see this a lot, actually. I mean, it does seem silly, and it seems like, this is the M in SMART, right? If you're looking at SMART goals, but I see it a lot in churches where I'll go, do you have any goals set? And they'll go, yeah, well, they may say something like, we want to reach more young families. Okay, that's good. All right. Well, how many young families do you have now? What do you mean by young family? What is a young family? How would you qualify that? How would you quantify that? What does that mean? So saying something like, we want to grow younger or whatever might fit better as incorporated into your vision versus calling that a goal. That in and of itself is not a goal, because you can't measure that necessarily. You'd have to be more specific. So going back to the joke about the marathon, right? Like, you got to measure it in something, in miles and kilometers. You got to know the length of it. It has to be measurable. You can't just go, it's running for a long time. No, it's got to be something you could actually measure, which ties in then to the next one,
right?
Because they're kind of married.
They are married, yeah. So the next one is being specific. You can't talk about measurable without talking about specificity in the measure. So
right.
These
would be the S and the M in SMART. So we are straight up stealing S and the M from SMART here.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, going back, I mean, growing a small group ministry, growing the church in general, lowering the age of the church, all these things you've got to have some kind of specificity to it, and a timeline for it, so that you're actually working towards something that you can compare today to tomorrow to a year from now, and know how your progress is coming along.
Yeah, I really love, if you've not read The 4 Disciplines of Execution, it's a great book. It's really long, so odds are you probably wouldn't sit and read it. I didn't read it. I listened to it on Audible. Not a sponsor. But
it sounds like an Audible ad you're about to go into.
Yeah, are we doing an Audible ad now? No, not a sponsor. But did listen to 4 Disciplines of Execution. They talk about having wildly important goals, or WIGs. And I love the formula for writing them. And it's good. It's from X to Y by when. So we're going, choose the thing you're going to measure that's measurable, like small group ministry attendance. So we're going to grow from 40% of our regular attenders engaged in a group to, 55% of our regular attenders engaged in a group by December 2021 or whatever. That's very clear. We know what we're measuring, and we know where we are right now. That'd be the other thing I would mention in the specificity, AJ, is lots of times we'll say, well, we want to increase such and such by 15%. Okay, well, what would that even mean? What are you now? Lots of times I'm talking to churches and they'll go, well, I think we could increase by 10%. Well, what are you at? Is that a crazy number? Mm-hmm. Or is that too easy to hit based on where you're at right now? Right? I mean, if you only have 10% of your folks serving or engaged in a group and you want to increase by 10%, you should shoot for higher than that. You could do better than that in a year if you've already got a really low number. If you have a really high number, increasing by 15% or 10% might be impossible to hit. So, I love that formula from 4 Disciplines of Execution, from 4DX, from X to Y by when, because it tells you where you are, where you want to go, and when you need to get there by. Yeah.
And that again connects into our next one, and that is that your goals be performance-based. And this is really a really important one, and probably, I think, maybe the most overlooked component. And that's that your goals should require specific actions by specific people. And there's a lot actually surrounding this, especially when we're talking church staff, but even in volunteer teams and just lay leaders in the church. But our goals have got to require specific people to do specific things. And so this brings up the, training challenges and the way we measure things and understanding even people's roles and job descriptions. there's a lot if you peel back the covers on performance-based goals, but we cannot set a goal without connecting it to a person or people, and knowing what they've got to be doing, and then knowing who are they accountable to, who is responsible for them, this layer after layer.
Yeah, let's go back to small groups for a minute. I mean, I think that measuring your percentage of small group attendance is okay. I think in these COVID days, even as we're coming out of it, it's still hard to measure, because how many of your folks are not reconnected? How many of them are watching online? Yeah, it's just really difficult to hit a percentage. But beyond that, it's not the most performance-based metric that you could choose. So saying something like, we want, from 10 groups to 15 groups by December 2021. So you're trying to start 5 new groups. It's better. It's a better goal. It's still specific. It's still measurable, but you can, it's more performance driven. You'd have to recruit the leaders. You'd have to train the leaders. You have to find the people to attend a new group. You can't, a group by definition is more than just the leader itself, right? You'd have to find people to connect. That would drive the people who are, involved in your membership class in terms of getting new people connected into groups that aren't currently in groups. So it drives the performance of a lot of different people, not just 1 or 2 people. It drives the performance of the person starting the group, the person training, the person connecting people into groups. It pushes the performance of a lot of people. So you can see, AJ, just objectively, that's a better goal to set than increase a percentage, which may be really hard to measure. That's going to be hard work, not knowing who is an average, what is your average worship attendance. It assumes that you have a static metric that's reliable, which right now it probably isn't. So those things you got to think about. What's something that's going to drive action, not just in one person, but in a lot of people and a lot of different stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. This should make you look really critically at your staff and volunteer teams, how you define things. And so, yeah, there's a lot in this one particular point, but it probably will also be, one of your hardest drivers, one of your greatest drivers too. All right, our last point out of our 5 today, Scott, is that ministry goals and benchmarks should be temporary. They should be established to be surpassed within a timeline. So don't vision is for long-term things. Okay. 5-10 years out, there's big picture things that we want to change in our short-term, near term, inside of a year. These things should have really, things that we could actually get to or come close to, or maybe get a little bit over. So, so make sure that your goals are set so that you can make some good progress, you can celebrate some wins, and then you can reset. And maybe you're going to just do the same thing again. Maybe it's, okay, we want to launch 5 more groups next year. Maybe that'll be the same thing. Maybe it'll be something different. But let's get to the end of something, reevaluate, reassess, set a new goal, or maybe increase something, but a change will be made. We'll call this to an end. We'll see where we are, and we'll set something new.
Yeah. So let me just put some bones around this for a minute, or some flesh on these bones, I should say. So I've been doing some health stuff. Like I had been feeling bad the last couple of years, decided I got to make some changes, just feel a little bit healthier. So the thing that I'm tracking right now is weight. Like that's how I'm measuring my progress. I've got a goal weight I'd like to get to. And if I keep on pace, AJ, I should be there in about 6 months of where I want to be. I don't have really aggressive goals. I'm not like trying to get ripped or anything like that. If you're watching the YouTube video, you're trying to imagine me like jacked. It's just, that's not ever going to be me. Okay. And that isn't my goal. My goal is just to be healthier. But see how that's not a good goal. Like that's a good vision for myself, is to be healthier. But I got to get more specific. So I have a goal weight I want to get to. That's obviously, it's specific. It's something I can measure. It's performance based. It's driving my action. Like I can measure the number of calories I'm burning, then I can measure the number of calories I'm bringing in. But it's temporary, AJ. Once I hit that goal weight in hopefully 6 months, about 6 months, and I have sort of an intermediary goal, AJ. I have a goal I'd like to hit in May, and then I have sort of a goal I'd like to hit in August. But once I hopefully hit that goal, weight becomes a terrible thing for me to measure because I'm not trying to become rail thin. I don't think that would be healthy for me. It's not sustainable. It would be time to come up with a new goal. People get goal fatigue. So if you keep the same goal for too long and you never hit it, like that is not helpful for people. Or you do hit it and you never update it, or you never check to see that you're actually making progress. Like I have this with churches I work with sometimes. I'll carry them through the year, and then they'll call me 18 months later and they'll give me a problem, and I'll go, well, did you update this goal? And they're like, well, no. Why didn't you update it? People get goal fatigue. You got to update the goal. And whatever you choose to measure, AJ, will drive the action. So this goes back to the performance base. But like, since weight is the thing I'm tracking right now, it's driving a lot of my performance. But once I hit that goal weight, I'm probably going to choose a new goal, and it's going to drive my performance in a different way. It's going to drive my strategy. So you should think of your goals as temporary. Those goals are meant to get you to a certain place, to achieve a certain thing, and then you should change your goal or shift your goal or adjust your goal, at least the number, if nothing else. But maybe you choose to measure something else entirely, so that then you can impact what you're doing in the real world. Again, the biggest thing I want to emphasize here is that people get goal fatigue. And if you keep it for too long, people will forget, people will stop caring. You want to keep those things fresh so that it's always you always have a goal that's motivating you to do something in the real world.
Yeah. And that's, there's a lot of other implications from that as well. And really what you're talking about, Scott, becomes a culture in the church, a leadership culture, and eventually a culture within the entire church that you're always progressing, always making, forward momentum continue to happen. And that's super important. Otherwise, this is how churches fall into these ruts. And then 10 years, 15 years later, they wake up and they realize they're not where they once were. Societies pass them by, cultures pass them by, their city has changed, their neighborhood has changed. And I think this is so important. I think having this as a framework for leadership affects the culture of the church, and it's what will continue to drive your church through never being static, always reaching for the next thing, and always chasing that mission of making a mature in disciples.
I would encourage you. A good book, AJ, on this is John A. Cuff's book, Finish. Let's go Finish. Give yourself the gift of done. It's more geared towards like personal goals and setting goals for yourself, but the principles translate at the macro level with an organization. And you really want to, I really recommend that book. It's a great one that's helped me. And we'll link that in the notes as well, so you can check that out. But
we would love to work with your church too, because this is part of the strategic envisioning process. That, in the implementation phase of the work that we'll help your church do to get healthy, is that we'll be setting some goals and we'll be coaching you then through your first year of implementation, and then and wanting to teach you how then you can refresh those year after year and continue on towards vision accomplishment while staying on mission. So keep that in mind. We would love to talk with you about that, and you can get more information on our website at malfirstgroup.com. In addition to that,
let's recap these 5 things.
Yes. Okay. Sure. Let's do that.
Let's hit them one more time.
Number 1 was being mission-centric. Staying on mission. Establish and stay on that mission. Number 2, Scott, measurable.
Measurable. Make sure that it's something you can actually measure. So going back to my example, getting healthier, like maybe you could measure that, but not really. You really need something better than that, which leads to number 3, then being specific. You want it to be an actual number that you can track.
That's right. Number 4 was being performance-based. So you've got tasks assigned to specific people, specific performance things that have to happen for the goal to be accomplished. And then finally, that your goals be temporary, that you've got a timeline set, a goal to reach, and then a point in which things will be refreshed, reset, and ready to move on to the next piece. And
on that note, AJ, before we wrap this up, I just want to say, I think some churches are afraid to set goals because they're afraid that they won't hit them. And I want to encourage you this way. I always tell the churches I'm working with, I don't care too much if you don't hit your goal. It's just information. So let's say in 6 months, AJ, I don't hit that goal weight. Will I be bummed? Sure, I'll be a little bummed. But I'll still have good information. It will tell me, am I going fast or am I going slow? Are the things I'm doing working, or the things I'm doing, have they stopped working?
Mm-hmm.
So far, the things I'm doing are working. But things change. Your body changes. The things you do, things change, right? So I may have to change. So if you don't hit a goal, it's not the end of the world. It's just information, and you can use that information to make an adjustment. So I don't want any church to hear this and think, oh, well, now we're going to be all business-like, and we're going to care about is we got to hit these benchmarks. No, but if you don't have benchmarks, you don't know if you're going fast or you're going slow. And so I want you to have them because I want you to have good information that you can then take action on.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not measuring anything, then there's no way you're making good decisions. And going back to how we started this, you'll never get to where you want to be. You'll never be the church you want to be on accident. You'll only get there on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And by God's grace, right? By God's grace. But you won't get there on accident. So don't beat yourself up if you don't hit a goal. It's just information that you can use to make different decisions.
Yeah. Data is valuable. Use it to your advantage. That's great, man. Scott, thanks for this really, really helpful article this week. And you can find it on our website at malfirstgroup.com/80, just the number 80. That's the number of this week's episode. And we'll be back again with episode 81 next week. So don't go anywhere. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast as well, so that you'll be getting the feed as soon as it comes out. And share it with somebody else in ministry. We'd love for you to do that. We're here to serve, and we want to be able to engage with as many of you as we possibly can. Visit us at malfirstgroup.com for more information on this and things we talked about with strategic envisioning. You can also go to malfirstgroup.com/CMA to learn about our church ministry analysis. Setting a goal is difficult if you don't know where you're starting from. And we would love to help you get some baseline data points to help you decide where do you need help and what should you be working on, and maybe how to set a goal so that you can get there. Thanks for being with us. We love you. We're praying for you, and we'll see you back next week.
See you.